Welcome to the Media Nerds Podcast. I'm Dan Vadebonker.
And I'm Kenton Larson.
Kenton, our students this week for my class are creating advertisements, radio ads, and I gave them the option this semester, I haven't done this before, of choosing whatever business they want. So you do an assignment with them where you have them do Total Toys, right? And it's like visit the client, get to know the product, get to know all the stuff about them, kind of like, let's look at how we advertise this stuff from a basic level, but they don't actually produce it. They write it and you mark it and give it back to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a few students ask me if they could produce their 12 Toys ad. So I'll let you know how they turn out. I said yes, as long as you take your feedback into account, right? That's the point of it. You can't just take that script that got it, even if it was a B, take it and make it better and improve it, right? What we talk about when it comes to this, I'll get to the point in a second, is that you can't just like take it's first idea, worst idea. You can't just take the first thing you come up with and go with it. That is happening so much. We listen to radio ads a lot. We listen to big commercial breaks. We listen to ones in a row. And overwhelmingly, we're finding that just all the bad ads are a result of low effort, rushing, getting it on, writing it and just getting it in. But actually, one of the side effects of this assignment is that now I have students who are, of course, pitching me businesses that they know, pitching me their favorite restaurants or coffee shops or sports stores. And as a result, they're actually going to these businesses and talking to them about so they're kind of like, it's like the next level of your assignment, Kenton. It's kind of cool. It's like they learn something from your assignment and now they're building on it for mine. Good. So actually go ahead and talk to the client.
Good. That's good. And even visiting the place, the place. Like you don't necessarily have to interview somebody or anything like a news story, but just visiting there, you'll see stuff happening that you can write about.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to hear them. They're going to come in this week, and I hopefully will be able to play a few. And one of them actually told me that he played it for the guy. This is, I think, played against sports, and the guy was like, "I like that. Could I use that?" So I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's if he likes it, he wants to use it. He could run it. I'll talk to them about this. They could run it on Spotify Ad Studio." I don't know if they could submit it to a radio station if they would play it or not. There's certain standards that have to be met as far as like the sound quality, but I mean, it's still good practice for them. And I think I'm pretty proud of them for doing that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. That's great to hear that. That is taking it one level further where you talk to somebody. We used to do an assignment in second year where they went out and they had to get the client to sign off on it.
Yep.
And sometimes the feedback was not so positive. Sometimes the feedback was actually harsher than what was warranted. But maybe the owner felt ownership, of course, over the store, and then sort of gave the students a rough ride. And that was funny.
Assignment? Yeah, when I was in your class, Kenton, for that assignment, and one of my classmates actually went across. They did an ad for Canadian Footwear, which is across the street. You remember this? Yeah, and so the student went and got the guy. She went over there. She talked to him, and he's he does all his own ads, and he's like, "Oh, sure, I'll come over." He voices the ad, then he turns to her and says, "I would never run this. I would never say this," or something like that. Like he actually turned her in the moment after he finished voicing and said, "I would never do this," and then left.
See, I'm not going to say where. I had students come back once and it was signed off and comments painful to listen to.
Oh boy.
I'll never forget that one because it was just so funny. Like, it seems harsh when you're a student, but when you work in advertising, you're just like, what? That's the game. Like, so yep. Like sometimes you can hand in the Mona Lisa and the person would go painful. Back to the drawing board.
Bad mood. It could be painful, right? Who knows what's affecting?
Who knows?
Anyway, all right. I thought that was funny. I thought I'd share that with you, and I'll let you know how they turn out. Maybe I'll play a few on the podcast. That might be fun.
Yeah, we should. Let's do it because I actually do want to hear them. And once in a while, students talk about them to me, and I go, "Boy, it'd be nice to hear that." And they're like, "I'll play it for you, but class is starting or something." So I'm like, "Play it for me. Play it another time," and then we all forget about it after that. So yeah, we should do that.
Okay, Kenton. This week on Media Nerds, I want to hold an intervention for you. I think, well, I don't know. We'll see. I think that I've noticed a bit of a change in behavior, not just in you, with a lot of my friends as a result of watching too much American news. And I think, Kenton, that you are suffering from too much American news, and it's kind of making you a bit obsessive about Trump because you talk about it a lot.
No. It's interesting that you say that because I've watched none.
Oh, really?
Yeah, none. I think where things where you have to talk about it, is when Canada is in the crosshairs.
Okay.
That's what I
this is
think
about the
changed.
trade. This is about the tariffs and the trade war, not about Trump.
No, well, I mean, at the heart of it, it's coming from one dude. But you know, the repercussions of that upon Canada have dominated headlines and everything. I mean, for well, it's only been a week. It seems like a year.
Well, that's the point, though, Kenton. That's what I'm trying to say is that it's too much. It's like ridiculous the way these things are covered. My friend of mine, Greg, who was Super Pulp Science, tells me he waits 2 days after a story breaks until all the bullshit flies away, all this misinformation, all the stuff they're not sure about goes away, and then somebody actually puts out a story that tells everything from beginning to end, and he's able to find out what happened. But the way things are reported now, it's all like big headlines and here's the main part of the story, and then it's a bunch of talking heads discussing it. But he just finds that it's too upsetting to see, like, because people are like, there's a trade, oh, there's a tariff and 25%, da 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 da, and then that goes on for a couple of days. Then finally, oh, they negotiate a 30-day reprieve. And the same thing happened with the TikTok ban, right? This is the second time this has happened, really, where everyone gets all freaked out about something, and oh wait, it's not going to happen now.
It's
So I think
also
the trust is being eroded here with the public, and I think that's a bit of an issue.
I think it's also the way you stay in the news. If you know how the news works, that's a good way to stay in the news. Is to oh, in 30 days I'll get another big news bounce. You know, like, oh, TikTok was going to be canceled. Now it's back. Then in 90 days, I think it'll go again. Then it'll come back. But that's how you work the news. That's how a disingenuous PR person would work the news, is by doing that. But I mean, any PR person knows how the news works. And you can't. I used to do an assignment with the students where I got them to write a letter to the editor. And let's see what happens. How many people get past the gatekeeper? And it would be amazing. Like, it would like 40 people would make their letters, and like even weeks later they'd be going back and publishing those letters. Once in a while the letters to the editor became a news story, and because somebody, like, the classic was, I accused the Winnipeg Sun of being sexist, and they're like, oh, okay, we challenge you to write a piece about why you think we're sexist, because of course, like, oh good, it's controversy. So the news knows how the news works, and the PR person knows how the news works, and it's the snake eating its own tail. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. But what it's not good for is democracy, and also what it's not good for is actually somebody saying something. It tends to just be the classic speak in sound bites. I mean, when we think of media relations, we tend to think of visuals and TV/online video and that kind of stuff, because that's the world we live in. But it comes at the expense of people. Like, spin works. If people didn't report spin, it would stop working. But if you when you mentioned American news channels, that is just like, okay, no spin zone. Actually, it's the only spin zone where people, you know what I mean? People show up.
Okay, but you say you've been watching no American news, but I challenge that, because I think you still watch a lot of CNN, and that is American news. You watch CNN?
No,
Really?
completely cut it out.
Really? And was this the election? Is this because of you don't want to know about what's going on down there, or what?
I was burned out on the news. I just had enough.
Me too.
And I also knew where this was all going. That's the frustrating thing, is watching a bunch of people running around going, what's going to happen next? And you're like, if you have a brain in your head and you were around the last time, we kind of know where this is going. And so that's frustrating to see. It's like, to me, what made it different was the Canadian part of it. The Canadians, it changed Canadian thinking last week, and it reminded me of the I Am Canadian beer ad a little bit, where
I really hate
where somebody, oh, I still show it to the students in first semester. I show it to them. Count how many edits are in this ad.
Oh,
because it's an incredible, like it's something like 85 edits in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, there's like a crane shot and there's a swoop and there's a close up and it shows you how an ad gets put together. But the students who haven't seen it are still like, oh, that's interesting. Like it's almost like the Canadian Real Men of Genius in its own kind of weird way. But that's what made it newsworthy to me was the galvanization of Canada. And when Canadians boo at a sporting event, when they boo a national anthem, I don't know, like that's normally the crowd that's booing the national anthem gets called classless, right?
Did that happen where there's another one where people were booing the Canadian national anthem? Did that happen somewhere?
Yeah, then that was the response at one point.
Okay.
But
no, there was something that happened years ago that was similar to this, and they were booing the national anthem. I'm sure this has happened before. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. But you know, that's like that's Canadians' worst protest.
It's the worst way you can insult another country, right? Is to boo their sporting teams.
Right. That's all Canadians got in the arsenal. And buying products with maple leafs on them. Right. However, even those are highly suspect at the same time. You still got to dig behind that and see. Yeah. But to me, that's what made this last week different.
Okay, I guess so. I guess I understand that. Yeah. To me, I just felt like more of the same. And all I heard was grocery prices are going to go up. What else is new? That's been happening regularly for the last few years. I'm not surprised at that. I will deal with it. But other than that, it doesn't seem like there's much else I can do about it. So I'm not engaging. I'm not paying attention. I swipe real fast when I see Trump on my feed. And that's the same for Trudeau as well. I know he's still prime minister for now, but and then I'm starting to see, of course, on YouTube, I'm inundated every single ad break, and they're coming from both sides now. We have the liberals and the conservatives putting up attack ads against each other. And I'm so tired of it. I'm just sick of it. None of it means anything to me anymore.
Well, there has not been an election called, so let's start there.
I know, but I just hate that they're a lot. And the conservatives have been running them for a long time. There's been for more than a year. There's been a regular ad on YouTube. Now they've updated it to say the liberals. It used to say he made a deal with Justin or something like that. Now it says he made a deal with the liberals. So they updated the copy because he's not going to be prime minister anymore, and they want to keep it going. But yeah, just too much. It's overload. You're right. Getting burned out. It's just like they don't realize how much we see this stuff, right? And they don't realize the effect that it has on people.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And I also think, like, if I watch the news now, I'm more inclined to watch, like, there's YouTubers who talk about the news, and if they are funny, if they are, if they're engaging, like, I might watch some of that stuff, but I don't, like, I'm not looking for a newscast. Let's put it that way. Because that's probably the most frustrating thing to see. I mean, even the headlines, lately, the headlines in the New York Times have been strangely like almost understatement. Let's put it that way. Like, the person who's writing them is pulling back to such an extent that I'm not even sure. Like, half the time, I'm not even sure what the news is until you actually look at the detail. Maybe that's the point, to make you click.
Well, that is the point, and that's kind of what's happened is this fragmentation of news. You're right. The 6 o'clock newscast is for all intents and purposes dead. Like, I don't think anybody under the age of 60 is watching the 6 o'clock news anymore.
No.
And I think that there's no other place where we can get it all in one place like that. Like, it used to be, a newspaper was a good one place to get everything in one time. A newscast on TV or the radio was also a good place. I still like radio newscasts because it's short and it just kind of gives you little bites, but it's also like, it's also dependent on that person on that radio station putting together a newscast and that kind of stuff. So these days, the only way to really keep track, if you really want to keep track of the news, you have to like search it up. You have to like have, maybe Google News alerts going on for certain things you want to keep up on. You have to kind of build habits of watching things. Like, I really like, I'll be honest, as much as I complain about talking heads, I really like At Issue on CBC, their news channel, right? They have this panel, right? Scott, what's your name? The political, I don't remember.
That panel has not changed in 1,000 years.
I love it. I love it.
Andrew Coyne.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who else is on it.
Oh God. How can
Thea?
Okay, after I say it's been on for 80 years, I can't remember anybody's name, of course, because we're doing the podcast.
But they're hilarious. They're hilarious and they're very smart and it's a good panel and I like that. And they post it. They post it on TikTok is what I'm trying to get to. They
Yeah.
will post that content wherever they need to post it so people see it. And that's what news agencies have to do. That's what they're forced to do now. A lot of them are still not doing that. CTV is still being very frustratingly behind on this. They still don't have a local TikTok account. They have a national TikTok account. They don't really post anything on their YouTube channel. I thought they were starting to, and it seemed like maybe somebody there was starting to do it.
Yeah.
That's fallen off now. They don't really post anything consistently on their YouTube channel. And locally, our local CTV news is kind of like non-existent, I feel like, as far as the local news landscape goes. The CBC dominates. CBC dominates because they don't have to do a paywall and because people can click on their stuff and there's no obscure, message or anything like that. But that's pretty much it. CBC dominates most of the news cycles that I see, right? I still see CTV because I used to work there. But that's probably going to go away, I think.
Well, you know what's funny about that? So I always make fun of the CTV morning show because it is like the most painful 5 minutes on TV is, okay, you three, make conversation while we kill this next 3 minutes. And you're just, it is so awkward and it's almost unbearably, like it's funny at the same time, but it's unbearable until they have the script again. And then they sort of pick up. But I watch the weather in the morning while I'm drinking my coffee. I'm like, okay. And they always, and it's funny how they kind of put down, oh, Winnipeg, you're as cold. You're so cold. And then you look, it's like -12 or something, which in Winnipeg is like not that cold. You're going to be feeling it today, Winnipeg. Like they're even like trying to play up the weather, trying to make the weather worse than it actually is. And the weather we can actually check ourselves. So I always say to people, like, if the weather is highly suspect, then what's the rest of the news like? Like, what if we could check all that the same way we could check the weather? And it'd be like, maybe we wouldn't trust anything on this show.
And it brings up an interesting point because I think what we're seeing here, and I'm starting to see this more on TikTok, and I'm trying to branch out and I am watching more YouTube. Instagram still sucks and I hate it. But I trying to watch more and I see more trends of like do-it-yourself news. So these are people who are TikTokers or YouTubers or Instagrammers, and they have built a little following of people. And they basically, one of them I'm going to talk about is Boots on the Ground. I can link to him in the show notes. He is from Regina, and he is a batooked person. You may have seen him in your feed with glasses and a toque and a beard. And his logo is that. He really leans into the Canadian stereotype. I think the toque, it drives me nuts, honestly. The toque makes me not want to take him seriously as a news person. But he's determined to do it. It's whatever. He knows his brand. But what he does is he like makes videos about basically critiquing the government and critiquing other kind of media platforms and that kind of stuff. But he puts a lot of opinion into it. So it's not very balanced. It's very left leaning and that kind of stuff. But then I do see some other people who are trying to do more balanced reporting. They're trying to focus on, like, one person is trying to focus on the far right and all their weird little shenanigans and all that stuff they're doing over there. So she reports on that. And they're building a following on TikTok by making these videos. And that's like, they're certainly not making a living at it. And they've talked about that in the past. This one guy in Regina is on a sabbatical right now. He is a teacher by day. He teaches like middle school. And so he's taking time off of work to kind of do the YouTube thing and see if he can make it work. And so I think it's going to be a new trend. We're going to see a lot more people doing independent news and reporting. And I think people are going to go to these sources to get their news, right? A lot of people get their news from these people on TikTok because it's still a news story. You don't own the news. If a thing happens, anyone can report on it as long as they can verify that it happened, right? And so it's the democratization of news, which is a good thing. It's taking it out of the hands of the corporations. I don't like that the corporations are running news. I think that they've fucked it up. And they've not done a good job with it. So I'm very much in favor of this. I hope that this is a thing that we see. I'm going to try and encourage our students to do it, honestly.
I was just about to say the same thing. They should be doing it if they plan to go into journalism. I think that's
I'm actually not talking about, I'm talking about if they plan to go into PR and working some boring PR job by day, they should be a YouTube journalist by night.
So you're saying, I get what you're saying. But nonetheless, I think it's the model moving forward for how people get their news. And you can see versions of it all over online, everywhere. You find your trusted news source. Okay, we all do. So now you trust this source. and the source gives you the news that you can trust because they have a track record. What happens if you're an insane person and you trust, and your trusted source is another insane person? That's the part that always, where I'll have a student say, well, I shouldn't say a student's insane, but I'll say, like, it's easy for a young person to pick up conspiracy theories from someone who appears to be trustworthy.
Well, that's where you get Fox
Yeah.
News, right? Fox News and that kind of stuff comes in, and they have the appearance of being a legitimate news network, but they report something that's like opinion based and not based in fact all the time, very right leaning, and they've got a huge audience of people who do believe them, who do trust them, right?
Yeah.
That's the danger of it. But again, this is because it's been in the hand of corporations. This is what happens when corporations handle the news, right? Independent people. Now, I'm sure there are going to be people on all along the spectrum, political spectrum, reporting on different things. So and yeah, people are going to want to find the thing that they most agree with, right? That's generally what happens. You want to find the news that you like, the news that you think is good, although a lot of it is bad news, but also that's part of it. I don't know.
Or the tone is part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, but I do think that like there's going to be a major shift in the next couple of years. The 6 o'clock news is going to go away. It's already like dying in different forms. Only unions are holding it together. I think that's really the case. Only unions are keeping these broadcasting companies from still doing, they're forcing the 6 o'clock news because all these people have jobs and they have to have jobs, but it's not, nobody's watching it. It's funny, actually, this reminds me, a comment one of the students made in one of their radio reports. So we're going to radio now, but it made me think that she's like, are there times of the day where there was actually nobody listening to this station?
Oh yeah.
Because like, I'm sure there are. I'm sure that is true for a lot of both radio and TV stations.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're just broadcasting and there's nobody listening, nobody watching. And that's more and more common these days.
Yeah, no, I think there used to be something on the ratings where they just put dashes because that meant the audience was too small to even measure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens. That happens. And I don't think we're done yet shaking out corporate media. I think there's going to be some consolidation in that area.
We don't need so they're all too consolidated already. That's
no, but I'm being diplomatic when I say consolidation. What I mean by that is, yeah, I mean, like, there's already been many layoffs, right? But I actually think there's some corporate media channels that will cease to exist, and in their present form, let's say, in their present form. I remember CBC last year said we're going to be 100% online in 10 years, did they say? So we're down to like 8 years or whenever they said that. And that makes sense. I think that's true. I think because just given the shift in demographics, I think it has to happen. We're going to see a big shift.
Yeah, people stop watching cable, right?
Yeah.
I still think they should stream it live, though. That's the one frustrating part about all this is that I would still like to have a live stream of these channels. If they're going to put the content out there, give it to us and let us watch it wherever we want to watch it. So it's frustrating. Like all these channels should be streaming live to YouTube. I think we've talked about that before. It's like that's on election night. That's what I was watching was YouTube. I wasn't watching cable news, and most people were on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, streaming what they wanted to stream, right? So, well, I can tell you that. Okay, I'm gonna try, and I won't get on you about the talking about Trump stuff. I was bugging you about it yesterday. I just had noticed that really recently, and not just in you. I've noticed it about a number of my friends have kind of like just keeps coming up in conversation, and I just don't want to talk about it. I have no desire to hear about them.
I think it's only the Canadian. It hammered Canada this week.
Okay,
it came to our country this week. It came to us, and we had no choice in the matter because like you, I'm inclined to say, well, if you voted for this guy, he's your guy. So enjoy the good and the bad and the highs and lows. It's all on you. But when it comes to your doorstep, now you're like, what do I have to do with this? And like I sort of I feel angry about it coming our way. Like I don't want anything to do with it, and that's the problem. Like I always think like, okay, when does everybody talk about this? They talk about it when something happens that's going to impact everybody in our country. I was like, well, what else could happen? Oh, well, like let's say some troops show up at the border to do exercises. Okay, that'd be a talking point. Like with each sort of thing that comes to your country, you have another talking point and you have another, oh boy, now what? And so I think that's why this week, And plus, we saw it everywhere. We saw it at the hockey games, and I mean, it was everywhere. Grocery stores.
I didn't notice it. I gotta say, I completely tuned it out. I did not notice it. I did not pay attention to anybody at grocery stores or hockey games. I didn't go to a hockey game, but again, I just had no, other than the few stories that I ignored, I didn't really,
Oh, it was
really
everything.
engage. And I feel good about that. I feel better that I didn't engage and I feel less stressed out.
Monologues, like,
Watch it.
oh, I will say I do have, the Globe and Mail. Funny story about the Globe and Mail while we're on the topic. So I still get the print edition handed to me from my stepdad when he's done with it. But the Globe and Mail suddenly isn't trimming, like it's a much larger piece of paper with the same news pushed into the middle of it. I was like, what's going on? And then it's like they're probably trying to save money by not trimming the paper. I think that's what's happening. I know. So
I'm surprised they're still printing a physical paper. Yeah. I'm so shocked by that. I was telling this to students is that, radio, we're talking about whether or not radio is dying as an industry. I'm like, well, we thought, I mean, when I was a student in this program, 16 years ago now, holy shit, no more than that, 17 years, we thought newspapers would be dead by now. We absolutely thought they would be dead by now, and they're not. They're still around. They're still
starved.
They're still kicking around. Like there's no. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised. I feel like the Winnipeg Free Press is this giant thing of money that they just got some benefactor who's just giving them money and letting them stay afloat. And that's basically how it's working.
Rich people own it. That helps. But they don't want to own it forever. So that's always a question too. But the other part of it is my stepdad is in his 80s. And so like I think we're seeing that was that's habit forming behavior. It's the continuation of a habit that started like when you were a kid. And I still like the newspaper because I read it when I was a kid. So as long as there's folks like that, but I think for our students, like I always say, like when one time we brought in the media planner at McKim, I always say, and she starts her speech by going, well, we all know radio's dead for people your age. And that was like 16 years ago or something. And I always remember that being like, what? Like jaw-dropping moment. Like just, we all know that. And when it's a media planner, it's kind of funny because you kind of go, okay, well, you know what I mean, you're the one buying the media. So if you're saying that you're not buying any media because no young person is interested in it, then that should make us sit up and take notice. But I find with our students, and even this week, I had students coming to class going, so what happened with tariffs exactly? Like they heard a notion of what happened, but and I mean, hey, part of what we do is a journalism program. So I can't help but notice the difference between what once would have been like a group of people super motivated to be on the cutting edge of all news all the time, kind of being more of a passive recipient of what happened. I heard this thing.
I think that's I think that's just a symptom of like the bad news. I mean, if it's too much bad news, you're going to not want to look at it. And that's just kind of what's happening. There's just a lot of bad news in the world right now. So they're just like, I don't really want to engage. Although they're supposed to, like the students are supposed to actually, they get tested on it, I think. So they should really.
Yeah, they do get tested on it. But probably there's one person keeping track of it who puts the practice test together, right?
Yeah.
That classic. Yeah, you only need one person to pay attention. Yeah, you don't need 60.
Let's stop talking about the news and talk about what else we've been watching. What else have you been watching this week? Or anything, actually. Any media recommendations?
I got a funny media recommendation. And I thought to myself before we did this podcast, can I recommend this? And I was like, the hell with it. I'm going to do it. And it's music, actually. But this is maybe truly the definition of guilty pleasure, but I'm playing through all of my physical records. I've been doing it about year 7 or something.
Wow.
But I'm only at the letter M. Okay. And so one of the things that you start to notice is there's certain albums that you're excited to play them and you can't wait. And you're like, this is so good. And then there's others you're like, this is going to be such a chore listening to this again, like it's dated or whatever. And so it's interesting. And I'm wrong about some, like some of the ones I'll play, I'll be like, actually, this has held up very well. And then there's others that I'm excited to play. Like I always think Paul McCartney's first album's got a bad rap. And then I play them. I'm like, actually, they're not that good. I think they're kind of hit and miss coming out of the Beatles. I can see why people hated these. So I'm in letter M, as McCartney would would imply. And I'm at Meatloaf. All right. Meatloaf, the singer Meatloaf, who died last year.
Yeah.
Okay. So Meatloaf is known for one album, Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell 2 was a massive like return to form for him. Huge hits. Okay, so I am maybe one of the only people on planet Earth to own Bat Out of Hell 3. Okay, 3. And so what I think what Meat did on this album is he took songs that Jim Steinman wrote for other people and then stitched them together, including Celine Dion. It's All Coming Back to Me Now. It's on there. Stitched it together and called it Bat Out of Hell 3. And kind of went, okay, here's a third one and the brand will sell it. But anyway, it's stiffed. I don't think anybody played his version. So yesterday I'm up to this album and I'm like, oh God. So I put it on and to my shock, I'm like, wait a sec. I think I'm enjoying this. And the album, I know the album is produced really well. It's almost at times metal, if you can believe it. And at times it's show tuney like you'd want. But I'm halfway through the record. I played half of it yesterday. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to recommend Bat Out of Hell 3 because nobody bought it. What year? Hang on. I have it right in front of me.
It's got to be like 90s, right? My dad liked Meatloaf. I remember he was really into Meatloaf. He probably had this album.
I think this came out really late in the game. 2006.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, I don't know if he would have had that one.
Yeah. There was no hits off this. I think if anything got played, it might have been his version of It's All Coming Back to Me Now. But as I say, like long songs, lots of motorcycle and hell references to justify the title. And album art that looks like all the other Bat Out of Hells. But what the hell? I'm enjoying it. So maybe guilty as charged that it's a guilty pleasure.
Did Meatloaf ever have any other albums besides like Bat Out of Hell? Okay, he did do other albums that were not titled Bat Out of Hell. Okay.
He did, but none of them were very successful. He always had to come back to the brand to have a hit, and this just didn't get there.
Well, I felt like he only had 2 major hits, right? Like, what was the big hit off of the first album?
Well, he had 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad and Paradise by the Dashboard Light were huge.
And the Bat Out of Hell 2 was I could do anything for love, but I won't do that. And that was the major hit off of that one. But he did have that off of that third one, and it was nothing. Interesting.
Yeah, but playing through, like, part of the problem is you play the first 2 and they were played so much in their day that they're almost unlistenable now. Like it's almost like torture because you've heard, I mean, I'll Do Anything for Love is 12 minutes long or something. We heard it a million times. It's exhausting.
Yep.
Whereas this one, nobody knows this one. So it's almost like refreshing to hear this one. Yeah. So there you go. Weird recommendation. Yeah.
So I'll do a bit of a weird one too. This is a throwback to the 80s. I've been really enjoying kind of recreating 80s television, all these streaming services. Yeah, all these old 80s TV shows. So there's been a number of them I've been watching. But the one I'll talk about today is Perfect Strangers. Oh yeah, which is a sitcom from the 80s. It stars Bronson Pinchot and what's his name? Mark Lynn Baker, I believe. Yeah. Is his name. And it's so funny. It's just hilarious. It was immediately funny. And those two guys have great chemistry.
Amazing.
They are like two of the comedy duos of the world. These guys should be up there. Their physical comedy is hilarious. Their back and forth, their chemistry, everything is so funny about that show. And I haven't even got to the good part yet. They're still at the beginning. It's weird. In the beginning of the series, I think for the first 2 seasons, they're working at this little corner store, like this little kind of secondhand store for an asshole named Mr. Twinkassetti. And he's such a jerk. And so I just got to the episode where they quit and now they're working at some kind of burger place. But eventually Larry becomes a photographer for like the Chicago Tribune or something like that, I think is where the story goes. And Balky, I don't know what ends up happening to Balky, but it's so funny. It's just hilarious. And I forgot how funny it was. And I'm just having such a good time watching. I watch like an episode every day. I come home from work and watch an episode of Perfect Strangers. And it's so funny.
You do remember the HBO show? What was it called again?
Leftovers.
What's that? The Leftovers with the Perfect Strangers episode.
Yes. And there was apparently, yes. And that was like they had Mark Lynn Baker playing himself. Yeah. And in that world in which like a certain percentage, and it was like a small percentage, like 3% of the humans had disappeared. Yeah. All the other cast members of Perfect Strangers had disappeared in that world. And he was left by himself and he couldn't figure out why. And that was his.
Right.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I'm going to watch that after this. I'm going to finish the series and I'm going to watch that. and they'll do that. So
I love Perfect Strangers. It's one of the great TV theme songs
yes,
as well.
absolutely.
And I love every episode has a variation of the apartment is full of sheep, Belky, but the girls are on their way. They're on their way. The girls are going to be here any second.
Well,
I love that. I love that trope.
Yeah, speaking of the girls, I'll say the two characters, the female characters, is Jennifer and I don't remember the other one's name, but Jennifer is like Larry's love interest, and Marianne. Marianne is Balky's love interest, and Marianne is like a bit of a ditzy blonde kind of a character, and she is hilarious. Like I think that actress is really really funny. I don't remember her name, but she's got a real character there, like a really kind of funny ditzy. She's dumb, but she also is kind of smart sometimes. But then Jennifer is so generic and boring, and she never says anything of consequence. Anything. It's always just reacting to something Larry does, or we have to go now, and then they leave, and that's it. It's so boring. So I just think that's interesting as well.
I think that was their version of Three's Company.
Yeah.
Those two girls, it almost seemed like it. That's what they were going for.
But I mean, I like the show. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So there you go. And that's on Plex, by the way. It's available on Plex. So you can watch the entire run of Perfect Strangers on Plex.
If I saw that DVD tower of Perfect Strangers that Walmart sometimes had, like once in a while they'll get a bunch of those in. If I saw Perfect Strangers, I'd buy it.
Yeah, it's worth buying. Definitely, it's hilarious. I've been having a lot of fun watching it. That's going to do it for this episode of The Media Nerds. I'm Dan Vanderbanker.
I'm Kenton Larson. Don't let the door hit you on the ass.